Avernus, Chapter 3, Hazardous Introductions.
Mills, be careful. One of my Marines just found a strange, organic material coating the floors near the bridge. Over.
Mills thinks to himself.
Organic material?
He then calls back to Davies over the radio and says,
Yeah, we've seen quite a lot down here in the flight lounge. There's blood all over the walls. As if they were redecorating in here. It's everywhere. I'll call you in 5. Mills out.
He then starts to navigate through the darkness with his team. He looks at the map. It looks like the deck isn't too far away from the engineering deck. Approximately 10 minutes from the flight lounge, it would seem. They start heading towards the tram waiting area when they start hearing a thumping sound as if someone was banging on the walls from the inside.
Don't worry, man. It's probably something to do with the ventilation system.
Mills reassures his men. They arrive at the tram station. When they check for the core controls for the tram, it looks like they aren't working, much like the lights. Mills instead eagerly decides to find another way and finds a ladder down into the trench where the tram would hang above. They start climbing down the ladder and moving through the massive dark trench towards the engineering deck. 5 minutes later, they see a door that reads, Sub-Engineering Deck.
This looks promising,
Mills says in an enthusiastic way. The door slides open, and they make their way into the corridor, until they reach a door that says, Special Ordnance Storage. The door was locked probably due to a protocol the ship's AI had activated upon impact.
Open the door, Harris.
Mills commanded the engineer. The engineer steps forward and says,
Probably gonna take 5 minutes, sir.
The engineer breaks open a panel on the wall and starts working on an override for the lock. After a few moments, the Marines see the interface on the door change from a red locked interface to a unlocked white interface. The doors slide open, and one Marine runs in and crouches, scanning the room while the others follow suit, watching for any movement in the darkness. Mills starts walking forwards, into what seems to be the middle of the storage room.
Not much in here for special ordnance. Marines, move out.
That's where Mills hears something.
Hang on, Marines. Do you guys hear that?
Mills asks.
It sounds like squishing sounds and something else. I can't quite put my finger on it.
A Marine replies. The Marines join Sergeant Mills in the center of the room where they shine their flashlights up ahead and see a body on the floor. They move up on its location. From what they can see, it doesn't appear to be human, at least not anymore. It looked like a science experiment gone horrifically wrong. The body was approximately 6 foot 8 inches tall. The stomach had been torn wide open to the point where the intestines were completely exposed, with 2 additional arms and hands coming out of them. The upper part of the body was normal except for scythe-like blades that had formed out of the palms of this creature's hands, and it had a jawless mouth. One of the Marines went in for a closer look and poked it with a prod stick. As soon as it had made contact, the thing had lifted itself upright, with its legs in quick succession. That seemed like a defense mechanism. The Marines started firing on this monstrosity, but to no avail. The bullets just went straight through it. The thing just started barreling towards them like it had no pain, no nerves. The gunfire didn't even faze it. The combined shots tore off one of its arms and then one of its legs. But it wasn't done yet. It used its scythe blade to pull itself along the floor, dragging itself towards them. When a Marine pulled a pin from a grenade and rolled it straight towards it, the monster just pulled alongside it, and the grenade exploded. All that was left was the remains of the torso and scattered limbs.
Stand down, men. It's over,
Mills says. A Marine then says,
That's crazy, Sergeant! It just kept coming! Like it didn't even have a conscience about pain, or it just didn't care!
The lights turn on, and the Marines start accelerating until the engineer shouts,
Whoa! What the hell is that?
The engineer points to another one of those things, but this one was different. It looked like it had been stretched out. Its arms were as tall as the Marines and the legs were the same height. It had an elongated neck, but the torso looked like it had been scooped out. The Marines start firing their assault rifles at this thing like the last one as it ran towards them. Sergeant Mills sees another necromorph. This one looked like it as if it had been cut in half and the legs were replaced by a tail, or at least twisted into one. It climbed onto the wall. It then leaped into the air, going straight for Sergeant Mills and knocked him over. A Marine used his shotgun on it, distracting it from the sergeant until the blade at the back of the tail impaled the Marine's head. The tall necromorph launches a tentacle at one of the Marines, wrapping around his neck. The Marine tries to pry it off of his hands, almost wrestling with it, until it ripped his head clean off his torso. The engineer sees this and turns tail, runs for the door, until he sees a severed head fly straight towards his neck, wrapping its neck muscles around his neck like an anaconda, growing tighter and tighter, until it pushed the tips of his tentacles into the back of his neck. Disconnecting the spine, it then sliced through part of his neck and pushed his tentacles into what remained of the tissue of the engineer's neck. As his body flopped to the floor, the body had a few twitches in until it climbed back onto his feet eventually, and the engineer's former hands started pulling at his head, beginning to tear it off the rest of the body. As the necromorph pulled the head completely off its hinges, a camera falls off the helmet and onto the floor next to the door. The last remaining Marine looks in shock, seeing the rest of his team has become a mess of scattered body parts and pools of blood. Sergeant Mills grabs him as they make for what seems like another exit. They open the door, but a scythe blade runs through the last Marine, like a knife through butter. The door closes and Mills lets out a sigh of relief, but remorse for his fallen comrades. Suddenly, he hears a rumbling noise in the vents, as if those things were now hunting him. The video log ends. Davies raises his gun and makes for the other exit until he sees something. He makes his way around the corner to see a weird blue glow. He continues walking towards her until he sees what he saw in the video log on the bridge. The marker. He remembers what the old guy said in the video. He raises his gun, preparing to shoot, but then he thinks,
I can't risk giving my position away. This thing could withstand my attacks, and worse, those things, those necromorphs, could return at any moment.
He ponders for a moment, staring at the markings. However, the marker had bigger plans for the necromorphs, which was to expand their territories and begin the journey towards convergence. A hand activates the airlock opening procedures, opening the doors, making that creaking sound once again. At the quarantine base, a scout Marine reports back to say,
Someone's been spotted exiting the ship debris line.
Commander Mills asks,
Davies? Or Mills?
The scout replies,
I'm not too sure, sir, but they are wearing UNSC armor, so definitely one of ours.
Commander Mills shouts in anger.
Let's be off then. We need to arrest that Marine for violating my direct orders.
They exit the tent to see the Marine shambling towards them in the distance. The commander looks through his binoculars to see the Marine coming closer, and it looks like a normal Marine unit, except he's missing his helmet.
Alexis, move out. Arrest that Marine and bring him to me.
The Pelicans and Hornets move away from the crash site as soon as they have seen enough of the wreckage and start circling the quarantine base and begin landing procedures to report back to the commander. The squad, led by Alexis, makes its way towards the shambling Marine. She then says reluctantly,
Marine, place your hands above your head. You are under arrest.
As she said, the shambling Marine stops in its tracks and pulls up a Magnum pistol and starts shooting at them. It manages to kill a Marine and wound another before Alexis shoots a double tap into it. One in the heart, one in the head. Before she can even think as to why the Marine would turn on them, a voice from the radio comm shouts,
All Marines, return to base immediately. Emergency.
As the voice disappears, a huge roar, followed by smaller roars, can be heard coming from the direction of the crash site. A horde of necromorphs can be seen running straight towards them, making the distance between them and Alexis' squad much smaller. She orders her men back to the base and to prepare for battle. The Hornet pilots hear the commotion over the comlink and rush through the air to give cover fire to the squad. Bullets start raining down upon the horde. but to no avail. The necromorphs continue charging towards the base and Alexis. As soon as they make it towards the front lines of the base, a shockwave hits them. The hornets and pelicans soon fall out of the sky, falling straight to the ground, some impacting the base itself. The necromorphs are nearly at the base. Commander Mills shouts to the front of the base.
Fire at will!
Bullets whiz past the necromorphs, most hitting them, some critically injuring them, dismembering limbs. However, the necromorphs had made the distance between them and the base within breathing space in no time. A slasher necromorph starts cutting through the ranks. It latches onto a marine as if it was giving him a hug, but while holding him, it was chewing out his neck. Another necromorph, the size of a warhog, barrels on through, tearing and ripping the marines apart. The base was quickly being rushed. The huge necromorph picks up a marine that was just laying on the floor, probably in an attempt to play dead. It forces him into its gaping maw. Muffled screams could be heard while it was crunching down on its victim, until the brutish necromorph rips him back out and spits the head out at another marine, knocking him out cold. While another necromorph comes running into the base and collides with a marine holding a rocket launcher, it steps onto his chest, and if it had eyes, they would be making eye contact. The marine tries to knock it off him, when the necromorph grabs his arm and rips it completely out of its socket, and then tears it off his torso. As the marine bleeds out, it grabs the other arm at the wrist and slowly drags him away towards the crash site. It seemed as if they were fighting a losing battle, but in reality this wasn't a battle, it was a massacre. A group of ODSTs grabs the commander and pulls him away from the battle. Alexis gives the order to retreat, as they aren't a match for a force that fierce. She quickly makes her way to the commander and shouts,
What are your orders, sir?
The commander is in shock by what he sees. 50 Marines were all lined up at the front of the base, most dead in a matter of minutes. Alexis slaps the commander to bring him back to reality. The commander says,
Abandon the base!
At this time, they run towards a warthog, get into it, and make their escape. A ODST asks,
Back to Alpha Base, sir?
The commander thinks for a second. The base is 3 miles away, however, there is a battalion of Marines stationed at the research facility.
Get us to the research facility now.
The commander orders them.
Sir?
Alexis responds, confused.
The research facility has innocent lives there. They must be warned of this new threat. If we can get there first and issue an evacuation order, then we can take them back to Alpha Base.
The commander explains.
If we get back there.
A ODST responds, sharply. Commander Mills shouts.
If you don't like my orders, you can get out and walk back to base if you like.
The warthog comes to a stop. A couple of ODSTs get out of the warthog.
What the hell do you think you're doing, soldier?
Commander Mills asks, sharply.
You guys take the commander and Sergeant Lexus to the research facility. We'll make our way to Alpha Base and tell the lieutenant what's happened. Make sure they are protected at all costs. Now on your way.
The commander puts his hand on the ODST's shoulder and says,
Good luck to you, soldier. I hope we see each other on the other side.
The warthog revs up and starts pulling away from the 2 ODSTs, and they start walking northward. Just before the massacre of the quarantine base, Davies thinks to himself,
If I could just find out what type of rock this is, then maybe I can find a way to destroy it.
He places his hand firmly on the marker. He starts hearing whispers, but then hears a deep fizzing noise followed by a sharp pain in his head. Davies freaks out, trying to pull his hand off the marker, but somehow he couldn't bring himself to do it. As he screams in pain, he starts to see flashes of images he couldn't quite make out or even begin to understand. They looked like a glowing wind around the marker with necromorphs all around it, almost like they were worshipping it. He sees something else that looks like a moon or a planet, but alive. He also starts to see blue symbols coming out of the marker as if it was trying to communicate with him somehow. After a few moments, he finally was able to let go. He quickly ran for the door Mills had gone through. He opened the door and ran through the corridors, looking for Mills, dreading the worst has happened, that he had left his friend down. He walked until he saw a person in the fetal position.
Mills?
Davies says, in an unsure way. The person looks up, and sure enough, it was in fact Mills.
Davies, thank God you made it.
Davies hugs him and says,
Thank God you're all right. I thought you were dead.
Mills responds.
Might as well be. They tore right through my team.
Davies says.
I know. I saw the footage on the Marine cam.
Davies tells Mills.
We need to get back to base and tell them what's happened.
Mills says.
There's a hole in the hull of the ship. I think it leads somewhere. Maybe back to the base.
Davies responds.
Let's hope so. I don't want to spend another minute in this godforsaken shithole of a ship.
The two make their way through the damaged hull. It seems to lead towards a tunnel. Scared for their lives and exhausted, they don't question themselves and head through to the tunnel with their flashlights in hand. A warthog arrives at the research facility, and Commander Mills rushes towards the Marines and tells them in a press-for-time way.
Prepare for mass evacuation and get all the vehicles and all the researchers and scientists in the building into them. We are retreating to Alpha Base to plan our next course of action.
The Marines ask a quick question.
Retreating? From who, sir?
As Alexis was about to tell them of the threat introduces itself, as the necromorphs had followed them by flight. Alexis says, shocked by what she sees.
They can fly?
These necromorphs look like a bat, but with a few differences. One being it had a human skull for a head, and a long tail that resembled a spinal cord. The commander ordered them all into the research facility, and thinks to himself as they seal the doors.
Mills, Davies, wherever you are, I pray you are both safe.
They close the doors, and they seal them shut. The commander then starts walking to convene with the head scientists to let them know the overbearing threat outside. 10 minutes pass as they are talking, and necromorph smashes through the entrance, showing that a sealed doorway wouldn't be of any help to them. Necromorphs start pouring into the opening, rushing the entire facility, slaughtering anyone who isn't quick enough or tries to resist them. Several Marines try to be heroes, firing all they have to slay these monstrosities, but there were too many, and without extensive knowledge on how to defeat them, they were no match for them. Alexis grabs the commander and a few researchers and heads towards another room at this moment. A few slasher type of necromorphs seize them and starts charging towards them. As soon as they are all inside this compact room, they close the doors and lock themselves in by destroying the panel adjacent to it. Alexis then starts using a blowtorch to weld the edges of the door to the frame, in an attempt to further lock themselves inside.
Well, that's all well and good, but how are we going to get out of here?
Commander Mills asks, frustrated at how little his efforts have worked for them so far. They fail to evacuate the research facility, and once again in such a short period of time, the necromorphs have taken over the research facility and quite literally boxed them in. A researcher says,
Well, we could.
but was cut off by another researcher.
Now don't listen to him, sir. He's just new around here and doesn't know how to keep his mouth shut.
Commander Mills asks the researcher.
What is it, son?
They start hearing scraping at the door when the first researcher replies.
We could head into the restricted area. It's off the map, and there's another way out that could prove useful to us.
The second researcher jumps in again and says,
It's got a lot of danger, though, sir.
he was quickly cut off by Alexis, shouting.
Danger down there? There's more danger up here than down there, and I want in on this escape plan.
Alexis stomps the floor as she finishes, but the floor sounded hollow, and that's when the other researcher reveals that the floor leads down into what they call the basement. They open the hatch. As they do, they see a scythe blade coming straight through the door.
Well, if those things get in, we're all as good as dead. Now let's get out of here!
Commander Mills shouts at the researchers, desperate to escape. They quickly make their way into the basement. As everyone makes it through, the last researcher finally joins them. But as the necromorphs smash down the door, they see the hatch ajar. And as they move into the room, the researcher under it pulls it down, locking it. They made it. They finally escaped the terror of those things, and perhaps to something new.